introduction, and as we are a small group today, maybe we can each introduce ourselves and our own interests. And rather than give formal presentation, maybe we can make it more of a discussion. So we look forward to hearing your different opinions as well. So today's title was given by Brigitte, actually, and she is currently joining the program, Dislocate art event, which is an art event which is currently taking place in Suginamiku, and we have a 2-month residency program in which Brigitte is participating along with John. And every year we have a different focus, but this year our question is it working? And we're trying to examine the particular social condition, not only in Japan, but in the wider Asian society, as to our labor environment and its connection with the art field as well. And I think this year we have had many questions which are brought up by changes in perhaps the Japanese law, for example, with the changes in the dispatch law, and also the new introduction, for example, of foreign domestic workers in Osaka and Tokyo. And there are various different policies which the government are enacting, which are really shifting the ground for labor conditions for both Japanese nationals and foreign migrants as well. So we want to try and examine that field, and then also how it's relating to our art engagement as well. How maybe artists are responding to this labor condition, and also how they are also living within that environment as well. So maybe from the title, Thinking Over Time, we have the idea of overtime. Maybe we have idea of zangyo perhaps, but maybe we can also interpret it on many different levels. So to think beyond time, or how we divide time. So particularly maybe questions of labor versus leisure will be a particular area that we'll be focusing on today's discussion. Maybe we have a number of different texts that we have been referring to in our discussions through Dislocate recently, which include maybe Rancière's Proletarian Nights, which is looking at the kind of division of workers' labor time during the day and how they engage in an intellectual, cultural level at night, for example. So how we can grasp time away from our labor and change our subjectivity in this way. So maybe if we look at the history of the labor development in Japan, we have the big impression of the bubble era, and then since the bubble burst in 1992, there have been a lot of impacts upon how people are working and the different regulations and contracts which people are engaged in this way. So maybe we'd like to touch upon that as well. So maybe I won't make too much more introduction, but maybe I'd like to hear everyone here where you are coming from and what your interest is, and then maybe we can start off with Brigitte's introduction as well. So who would like to start off?
ごめんなさい。very casually. Very casually, but self-introduction. Possible English, impossible Japanese. My name is Fumio Inoue, and organized camp discussion and talk event in Tokyo. です。よろしくお願いします。どうします？じゃあ、順々に行きます。じゃあ。
My name is Eri Takehisa. I'm a sculptor, and part-time job, but that company helps me. My boss and fellows and president helps me my artwork, so I feel comfort. Thank you.
どっちもいいですか？英語だ日本語だったら馬さんが翻訳を。
Good evening. My name is Maisaka. English input in the country. And after ask Emma, please. 英語置いてきました今。
Maisaka-san is joining the dislocate workshops.
My name is Yoshiko Sado. 英語は全然できないので日本語でしょうか。ディスロケートメンバーで、お金に疑問を持ってですね、それから働くことに疑問を持って今ディスロケートワークショップにずっと参加しています。ありがとうございます。
Dislocate workshop, and she is a member of the dislocate team. Recently she has a lot of question about money, so she also initiated a dialogue lab in which we are focusing the discussion about the economy and monetary exchange.
My name is Midori Miyakawa, and I'm a student at university, and I'm also a member of dislocate team. Recently I am writing my graduation thesis about Barnett Newman and his expression about space and his concepts about space.
My name is Go Kawashima, and actually I'm working for the publisher of Travel Guides. I'm not a member of Dislocate.
You can always join.
I'm especially interested in the photography, but also the art. But for the art, I don't really think of the needs of the political theme or these kind of things.
Hello, my name is Iwaya. My official card is Arts Council Tokyo. My job is planning and grants division, planning department. My field is art and moving images. But also I have another one. I'm working to open free space, which can be anything and any field. So I'm very interested in this kind of. So I'm here.
Hello everyone, my name is Deniz. I am a performance artist. I'm originally from Istanbul, from Turkey. I perform with the persona of Miss Universe, and I worked previously in arts initiatives in Istanbul, and I was manager of an artist fund space in Istanbul, and I organized many interdisciplinary projects, like from combining art and social works and social studies. So I'm also interested to know better the art scene and also the political scene, and also more about Tokyo, since I live here since 2 years. Thank you very much.
頑張るとね、本当に。
I'm Naoki Okumura. I'm artist and owner of this house. This house is Artistran Space. そんな感じです。
My name is Haruka. I graduated last year in the UK. I majored in museum studies. working? This is very close question to me because now I work at the gallery, and this is for money, but also for my career. So sometimes I overwork, but I don't feel bad sometimes because it's also for me, for my skill. So I have some confusion about work. So that's why the theme of this year of this topic is quite interesting. Thank you very much.
あと、Please translation お茶とお菓子があるので、もし欲しい人っていうか、回していきますか。で、お茶飲みすぎてトイレ行きたい人は2階にあるのでお願いします。
So we have some tea and some snacks. So please feel free to take them anytime. We also have a break halfway through as well. And if you drink too much tea, there's a toilet on the second floor. So please feel free to come and go as you please. So I think Haruka touched on an important point here as well about kind of overworking and how we become in a kind of grip of working 24/7, and we're finding it very difficult to distinguish between when we are on the job and when we are off the job. And especially maybe for artists and art workers, this is a really a big issue. And I think with maybe the Shakai no Geijutsu Forum, I'm not sure the English translation, but recently they have been making a series of lectures which are really focusing on this issue. So for example, Yayoi Yoshizawa has made a very detailed research about art workers and their conditions in which they are working in, including not only pay but also their hours, also their relationship with the people that they're working with. So maybe this is a particular question for artists and art workers as well. But also if we look at wider society too, we feel that there is a very difficult situation to switch off or to refuse to do overtime, for example. And we cannot distinguish when we are working and when we are not working. But at the same time, we have so much pressure of shushoku katsudo, I think, and this idea that we should fit to a certain maybe stereotype of how to work or what kind of place that we should work. And this is causing a lot of pressure on young people, perhaps. And maybe we can see the effects of this in terms of like the NEET generation, for example, or maybe those who become hikikomori, for example, to try and remove yourself from the pressures of work at the same time. So maybe is it working has many different levels in which we are questioning what work is, how we are engaging in work. Are we working now or are we not working? Or are we employed or not employed? And also what is defined as paid work and unpaid work, which is a particular question in terms of domestic work, for example, or caregiving work, which is a big issue currently in Japan as we have the aging population. And then also issues of childcare, for example. And then we have a wider question, is it working as in the wider scale of the labor market and the labor conditions in Japan and the wider Asian region as well. And maybe particularly today, Brigitte and John would like to focus upon condition of migrant workers that they have been researching during Dislocate and in their own personal engagements as well. And given that the population in Japan is decreasing, it's been projected that by 2050 there needs to be a rise of 17 million workers in order to maintain the current level of output and the current level of economy. So the government is now in a kind of dilemma how to fill that labor market gap. And they have two choices currently, which is either bring in more women into the labor force or to bring in more migrant workers. And currently the government's focus seems to be upon bringing women into the labor market. So we have kageyaku josei, so shining women. And it's been successful in bringing in about 1 million women newly into the market, into the labor market. But under what conditions and under what contracts they are working is maybe debatable. And if we look at, for example, the percentage of the part-time labor force or the irregular workers, almost 90% of regular workers are women. And of course, they do not have the same benefits and security as those who are in regular work. The government is also looking at different policies of bringing in migrant workers, but very specifically. And maybe we can see different fields that they are trying to bring in the new labor force. So for example, I just mentioned the domestic workers. So just this year, the government enforced in special zones in Tokyo and Osaka to bring in migrant workers for the domestic workers. So that means working in homes to help with housework, but also with childcare and maybe caregiving as well. We also have the issue of the technical training internship program, in Japanese, the Gaikokujin no Jishusei program, which is, I think, kind of a core supporting of the Japanese economy, but it's kind of hidden layer of labor which isn't defined specifically as labor itself. And the conditions in which people are working as so-called interns is quite worrying in some cases. So maybe I think Brigitte and John have also been researching about this topic. So while Brigitte has been here in Japan, we have been trying to connect her with many different organizations, including the Migrants Network, various lobbying action groups, and also individuals as well. So I think she will be sharing her research here and asking a question like how the issues of migrant workers are kind of core question for all of us. So maybe I can pass over to you. Can I sit? Hello everyone. Thanks for Masa and everyone in this hotel as kindly organized the event. As you can see here, the questions that I put forward, why migrant workers' problems are everyone's problems. I think it's also the questions, my questions to Emma when I first invited to come to Japan and do research on migrant workers. I am a researcher based in Yogyakarta, Indonesia, but also I work in a Kunchi Cultural Study Center, in which we are a research collective and interested to develop new methods of research, which not only want to make research output only on facts and in academic field, but also how to do action research and engage with the subject on our research. And since this year, we have the opportunity to do research and engagement with migrant workers. Since last March, maybe you can sit here. Since March, we did a project with Hong Kong migrant Indonesian migrant workers in Hong Kong,
which maybe I will also explain a little bit in my presentation. But and then maybe around a few months ago, Emma also invited me to do research on Japanese Indonesian migrant workers in Japan. But of course, for me as a researcher and also maybe a cultural worker, the question of doing a residency in particular place have a question of engagement and how to make a sustainable project when you do something in particular place which is not where I'm based. So that's why the questions that I put here, why migrant workers' problems are everyone's problems, I wanted to ask everyone to think that this is actually not just Indonesian problem, because it's Indonesian people, and it's not only Japanese people because it's Japanese, because it's in Japan. So besides human rights issues, why the Japanese and maybe everyone should give attention to migrant workers? First of all, when we see supermarkets and we see vegetables and chicken that were served in the supermarket, maybe we don't really think where did it come from. Maybe it's from Japan. But if we look the process of how the food were in the supermarket, we realize that it's actually through the work of migrant workers. During my research, I met many Indonesian migrant workers and also many Philippines and from Latin America who work in animal farming and agricultural farming. So in a way, the daily life in Japan and particularly in Tokyo, where maybe it seems invisible, we don't see many migrant workers here, but in the outskirts area, actually many migrant workers are working to keep the daily life going on here. Many also works in car and metal factories. The upcoming Olympic in 2020 also have a huge demand for migrant workers to do the construction work. The construction work. In Indonesia, these migrant workers also contribute a lot of state revenues through tax, and because most of them they are leader of the family, they send money to the family in the village, and in a way also keep the economy going. So these migrant workers are actually people who keep our daily life in micro and macro economics to keep on running. And that's why actually migrant workers should be seen as a transnational problem, and not only just particular because I am Indonesian. I have responsibility with the Indonesian workers, and on the contrary also because you're Japanese, you have responsibility to Japanese. It is something beyond that. It's transnational, and therefore we should think about translocal perspective, which should goes beyond transnational interest that goes beyond state or nation's interest. And of course, the problem of migrant workers is not only an economical problem. It is also a cultural problem, because when people migrate, they bring their culture, and of course, nowadays we also hear many, maybe not so many, but there are some social conflicts, because there have been no approach to think about this as a cultural migration, because it's only seen as an economical one. So the questions to start again is what made Japan needs the migrant workers? I think Emma has mentioned and introduced a bit about the inverted pyramid and about the changing of demography, where now there's fewer young people than the elderly people, and as she said, in 2050 there will be a lack of labor force. Last week me and Emma went to an IMF discussion. So apparently IMF and the Japanese government of course have this concern of the lack of labor force, and they have somehow 3 solutions of how to deal with this problem. And the way they develop the solution is very in an economical perspective, which I found it's easy. That is to replace workers with robots. They said we have to invest more on technological development, and of course the boosting the women's and elderly participation. And the last one is to import the migrant workers. Now if you see the way IMF or the government approach this problem is very somehow inhuman, in a way that they see the workers merely as numbers and tools to keep the macroeconomic goings, and even feminism is now used to keep productivity and for economic development. Importing migrant workers also some kind of cheap or fast solution to fill the workforce that is cannot be that Japanese society cannot fill. But the fundamental questions that we should ask, actually the elephant in the room, is what is the economic, social, and cultural condition that create this inverted pyramid population? It has not been posed. And what are the main factors that has led the nation's birth rate fell since 1970s? So we keep on trying to find solution, but we don't pose the fundamental questions. So in this presentation, I want to talk about time as an approach to talk about the problem of inverted pyramid in Japan, which now also impacted everyone internationally, because now there's a need for migrant workers. And I want to think what kind of approach we might do as a cultural worker to improve the condition. First, I will talk about working time. That is to talk about the condition of work in Japan, which, well, Emma, I think, has already introduced a bit. And I think as a Japanese, because you guys here live here and work here, I think you might have more stories rather than me, but I will just give some outlines of what I saw in Japan. And in talking about working time, I will talk also the shared problem between Japanese workers and migrant workers, so that in that terms we might think about solidarity, not only between migrant workers but with workers in general, because we are all workers. And second part, I will talk about leisure time, in a way to talk about the impact of working too hard and don't have free time, but also to think about how to use leisure time to create political subjectivities. Now, about the shared problem that we have, of course, the culture of work since post-war Japan has made, because the country needs to be rebuilt. I think three weeks ago, I did a workshop with elderly people around Nishio Gikugo and asked them about their experience of time and work during 60s and 70s. And one person told me that in the 60s he have to work really hard because he have this feeling that the country is need to be rebuilt, and that's why everyone's have to work hard together. But this culture of hard work is of course different from working for long hours that now we see in Japan. At least in Tokyo, I'm still amazed that even in 11 or 12 p.m. I still can see so many people in their work suit hanging on the train, which is something really strange for me, even which I don't see even in London or in any big cities. And this idea of developing the country is something that still exists until now. Even, I don't know, it's already almost 45 years after the war, where we want to build everything, like building create new building the economy, building construction for Olympics, and the idea is always to build, but there's no sense to take care or nurture what we have. The hierarchical culture in Japan, as I try to talk with people about why you have to work so hard, it's also because they said some people they cannot leave early because they have to wait for their boss to go home or some of their coworkers, and so this is like social condition that also impacted the idea of working hard. The other shared problems that I saw here is also about status of worker, and how nowadays the difference between full-timers and part-timers are more blurred because many part-timers